Fuentes here, another episode of Spiritual Conversations with Fuentes and Friends. Speaking of friends, Tom Ross.
I'm friends.
He's friends today, and I definitely in a past life for sure, which is what we're talking about today.
My experience, and this is all lives in the realm of conjecture that you can have a subjective experience,
Sure.
of. My experience based on that is that we're usually seeing a lot of versions of each other over time.
Right. Absolutely. And for everyone who's out there, whether you're listening to the recorded or live, this is really about us sharing our personal experiences, sharing some of our stories. By no means do we expect everyone to take everything as is. It's our truth, but it doesn't have to be your truth. You take what you like and enjoy it, and what you don't, it's okay. Just let it go. For me, I've definitely had some real past life experiences. I want to talk about those today.
Have you had them like you've felt them hear you now this life, like you've kind of done past life regression or have had a vision, or like what do you mean when you say that?
To everything, yes.
Okay.
All different kinds of variations, which has been pretty cool. But I'll define, and I want you to define your version, because for those of you who don't know Tom, honestly, I love talking to him. He has such a brilliant mind. It works in so many different ways. There's this beautiful, what I would call engineer mind that you have, that the way you process information and at the depth that you do it is really amazing. And it does remind me of that engineering type mind, but not the engineer that you would think of that builds buildings or anything else. More of like if you were to be one of the universe's engineer and know how to stitch together the fabric of time and the universal fabric, that's how I feel your brain works. But then there's the other side of you, which is this beautiful soul who's definitely connected from the spiritual side. And then you have a third part of you, which then is the one who lives here on earth, that's been managing your human world and business and stuff like that.
Sure.
So that's why I'm so excited to talk to you about this, because of how your mind works. And I'm really excited to really hear it and share it with the world, because I think you have a lot I know you have a lot to offer.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
So let me tell you my definition of past life before we even get into them all. And it's really, you've got to take into account that time is something that humans need to manage or regulate life. There's this linear concept that allows us mentally to digest this experience. With past lives, you would think past lives or before, because it's already past, so that means it happened before. And while there is some truth to that in construct of humanness, to the universe, it's all kind of happening simultaneously. So for me, past lives is more of a definition of multiple experiences or versions of yourself happening simultaneously. Maybe some of them have already existed, maybe some of them have yet to exist, but they're all there already as is. And the way I've seen it and been shared and been shown it is, if you can imagine water coming down, when water hits this earth plane, for example, or when water hits a surface, it starts to spread out. And if there were tracks or lines that it runs, and typically water will find kind of a path, right? It'll find a path, it'll follow a crack, it'll follow this or that. Well, when the soul comes in, it's so big that it drops in and it finds a path and it goes out. And so if you imagine this singular source of water hitting and then splitting up into multiple different experiences, and then all these individual droplets are kind of moving at different rates of speed based on the track or what's going on. And then, but they're all still dropping down, and it all comes from the same thing. And it's split up into these multiple paths, and all of them are dripping down at different rates, but they're still all connected. And if they may not know the other one exists, if they're not paying attention, or if they're just so focused in the one path. But if you can slow down, if you can do some work and try to go back up and follow the source path up to your higher self, to this bigger soul self, that's when I've noticed, for me personally, I start getting to experience other lifetimes and the things that have happened on them. So for me, it is a stream of water that is a separate stream of water that all comes from the same source or soul self, which then obviously comes from the universe. And they're all happening at different rates of speed. Now we could equate that to time. So that's where the past part comes in, because some of them have finished already and some of them have yet to finish or even begin.
Yeah, like we're living in a world that has, you know, that is, our perception is starts here and goes, you know, and goes there. And so within that, it's like stuff, you know, from a prior version of me would have necessarily existed, you know, previously. So yeah, I'm with you.
So in your experience of past lives, what is that, if someone were to ask you what that means?
Okay, so for me, we have a lot of commonalities in our viewpoint on this. So the way I associate with it isn't through kind of like water, although I know exactly, I feel you and I understand where that comes from. For me, it's almost like that the soul, there's one of the basic tenets of what I believe is that I am a soul and I am infinite. Okay. That is a basic part. The soul is infinite, and you know, and the soul has incarnated, you know, multiple times. Now, I view the soul as kind of like a hard drive. It contains the data set of all the versions of me and all the information that I have ever had. And it's there in like you said, it's being experienced at the exact same time. So it's kind of like if I don't know if this will translate or not, but if I right now in this life, I'm the very tip of this pen, okay? That is the version of me that was born to Tom and Jan Ross. That is the version of me that, you know, that's the loan officer, all that kind of stuff. All my cultural influences, all my genetic predispositions. That part is me. But the soul is like this entire you know, pen. The soul that is specific to the part of the soul that is specific to me is like this entire pen filled with all the information for all the different lifetimes of that. And it's being experienced in, you know, in real time. So as I'm going through my day, or as I'm experiencing life, I always like to say it's like the soul has a memory, but lacks the awareness to discern and disregard what isn't immediately present. So you and I can have a conversation like, you know, like this, and we are great, and yet I experience some agitation for some reason that I don't quite understand. And it's possible that there is a piece of information, you know, a part of maybe something that we're talking about, a part of me from a previous version takes issue, you know, with, you know. And so my experience of past life has been, although I've had experiences of past life where I've felt very strongly that certain things have happened, that I've had a vision of it in some way, that I've verified through different applied kinesiology methodologies or whatever. It most commonly occurs in my daily life in the form of, I'm feeling an imbalance somewhere. Is it me here now, or is there legacied information that's in the hard drive that kind of needs to be defragged, you know, a little bit?
I hear you. So I want to break that down, because I think that's a really cool thing. First of all, the pen, right? The tip of the pen is you born Tommy Jr.
Yeah, exactly.
In this lifetime, the one that does loans and has this beautiful mind the way you do. What would another lifetime? Would that just be an extra head on the pen, or how does that analogy or metaphor associate?
It kind of depends on which on what kind of paradigm we're talking about. So the way you describe, okay, water splash and then in every single direction, I think is a better way to contextualize everything happening at the exact same time. Okay, so the information in the pen, the body that's in the pen, is really it's for me, and the way that I'm approaching this context right now is like my experience of here now in this lifetime
is the tip of that pen.
Is the tip of that pen.
Got it.
And everything else is being experienced simultaneously, but I'm less concerned about the fact that it's about the fact that it's individual offshoots of a pool of water, and I'm more like here's my experience.
This is
now.
Just your one pen.
Yeah, it's my one pen. There's a degradation in my experience here, so there may be information that's from me, from a prior version, or like you said, potentially something future happening. But that's just how I kind of like relate to it. Does that make sense?
100% makes sense. And I really get what you mean now. So really, you almost throw away the rest of the lifetimes as far as from the tip of the head standpoint, because this is your reality. This is the person you know, the Tom you know, but you're also not discounting the fact that inside that pen, the ink, if you will, has all the different stored information from all the other lifetimes.
Right.
Unconcerned where they are, what they're doing, but more focused on the fact, are they affecting me here and now? And where it gets into us, you and I having a conversation.
Right.
And if I randomly say something to you and it's upsetting to you, it could be because, I was being offensive in some way, shape, or form. And that's a real tip of the head issue from Tommy.
Yeah, could be right now. If you're like, hey, you're getting kind of fat, I'd be like, oh man, that's a real dick move right now.
I didn't mean to say that. I didn't know it. No, I'm kidding. No, or if I'm just talking and you get triggered, the other thing is it the reality of what's experiencing in this lifetime, or is it a story from another lifetime?
Exactly. Right.
And then you have to discern the difference between those things, and then decide if you want to just defrag it, as you said, or let it go, or release it,
exactly.
or whatever else. Okay, cool. Now, let me explain a little bit more of that construct, because it's a really important one for us. And how does all this matter right now, here and today, is because whether you believe in past lives or not, or if it's something that you may or may be curious or aligned with, I can tell you personally, for me, I've always experienced other lifetimes of mine and relationships I've had with other lifetimes with other people, whether I've owned it or not. And the challenge with that, and especially since I get to work with so many beautiful people in a coaching standpoint, other people have had the same experiences. The challenge with that is sometimes we experience someone, and it shows up a lot in relationships, where you and I are now in a relationship, and I'm so drawn to you, and you must be the one, because I feel something different.
I'm quite fetching.
Okay, yes, you are. And I feel something, but yet you treat me like crap. But man, I feel this soul connection, and I feel this thing.
Right.
And that's no different than maybe you taking issue with me, but it may not be from this lifetime. It could have been a defrag that you need to do from another lifetime. Well, our soul connection and the relationship we had in another lifetime was meant to stay in that lifetime. And in this lifetime, we were just maybe meant to be friends or casual acquaintances. I've seen so many times in relationships, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a partnership, a romantic experience, whatever it is, I've seen so many people force relationships in this lifetime on all kinds of levels because of the sense of something deeper.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you're meant to have it in this lifetime. It could just be a nice, oh yeah, that was a really cool experience back then, and oh, there's a really cool soul connection. But it's not meant to be in this lifetime.
Yeah, or it's certainly there's nothing compulsory,
right?
About it, and there's I think you see that a lot of times in relationships where people are stay in degrading situations or abusive situations, and it's like I can fix them, I can do that, and there's a lot of different things to talk about, to unpack there, but that irrational kind of draw, I agree 100%. I think many times it's accidentally, it kind of moves into karma, a little bit here as well,
which we will talk about too. But the other thing is real quick, if you guys have questions or a thought or a comment, go ahead and put it down. Nikki will be monitoring those, and when we're going to open it up. This is about interacting, so please think of things, or if you have things, shoot them in the comments, and then we'll manage those here when we have time. But that does move into karma, and there's a whole nother level to that. But so talking of past lives, whether it's your example, which is amazing because it really isolates this lifetime and how the other lifetimes can be affected, and how we store the data of other lifetimes, or my example of the different streams and how they're all kind of a part of one thing, but then they kind of are existing almost in this simultaneous fashion.
I think sometimes with respect to people that will, you know, say trying to force a situation that just isn't meant to be in this lifetime. There's a part of you know, part of the personality is like an aspect of the soul, you know, to a certain extent, but it's also, it feeds into all the cultural like environment. So, you know, you, based on your cultural upbringing and based on everything that you've experienced in this particular lifetime at your particular tip of the pen, maybe completely, it doesn't make sense. Why am, like, it's incompatible, you know, like logically, and it's just the information. It's kind of like more or less magnetizing, you know, me into that situation. But the reality is it's not the same person.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same soul.
Right.
You know, from an infinite perspective, it's the same person, but it's not the same person
in this lifetime,
right here and right
being
now.
realized as the tip of
exactly.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing, and you said it, but I'll say it slightly, I'll add to it actually, is we're told in a lot of ways, and many people can experience this, is like, who is your soulmate? You know, who is your flame, your I don't know, there's a flame one too, but there's that concept of there's this one person. And whenever we experience somebody who is from a past, and you're going to have a familiar energy or a deeper connection because of however many past lives you had experience with them, that oftentimes is what does hold people to allowing themselves to be in a relationship that doesn't serve them, because of that deeper thing that's triggered from past lives.
Yeah.
But yet doesn't serve
your
you.
Soulmate can be an asshole. If they treat you poorly, ditch your soulmate, you know?
Yeah. So because honestly, I do believe what it does is it gives us this, the intention was always pure with the soulmate thing, because it was about believing that there is bigger and deeper connections. That really is what I interpret the message as. Where it got lost, in my personal opinion, is that it was isolated down to one person. There's one soulmate for everyone. When there's such an infinite, it's really hard for me, knowing what I know now, because I used to buy into the same thing. Knowing what I know now, there's no limitation as far as how many souls that we can truly be connected to on a deeper level. So.
Yeah, you know, and that's a really interesting thing. And I think for especially us in more of a Western culture, where you have like a traditional, you know, here's how relationships go, and this is you know, you're married and it's till death do us part, and all the vows that you take, etc. It can be a really interesting and almost difficult thing to wrap your brain around. The group that, you know, the muscle testers, the guys that I do are my really heavy implied kinesiology work. You know, we'll every once in a while we'll do a big event where there's maybe 200 people in a room, and we'll have you know, people who aren't advanced practitioners. We'll do muscle testing, get their testing working. People will have a subjective experience of ideas like, I've lived multiple human lifetimes, that I have, you know, that I've been married to you in one life, or her in one life, or her in one life, or him in one life, or like whatever. And it really, it becomes, it's neat when you have a subjective experience, or your body is like strengthened by the idea that this wasn't this one thing, you know? Right. But I think to your point, especially with respect to the idea of a soulmate, you know, when I am operating from this very traditional structure, then I'm only viewing, it's like, they're my only way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's not to put the kibosh on relationships or soul connections or love
amazing.
or anything. It's actually to expand that, to open it up to even more possibilities.
Which makes it more special, I think.
Absolutely. And it doesn't also mean that then you're not monogamous, because you can still be monogamous and understand that there's more than one beautiful soul connection in this lifetime that you can have on a deep, deep level. It just means that you get to pick and choose. Like, I just want to have this person in my life and then have that beautiful thing. So when it comes to this concept, and when it comes to past lives and how they relate, it's trusting that while you may have deep connections, make sure that the connection in this lifetime, the tip of the pen matches your tip of the pen.
Yeah.
And you're honoring yourself and honoring them, and they're honoring themselves and honoring you, and not just relying on some deep connection without the reality of the today. And then secondly, know that that's possible on multiple levels, in multiple ways, and that you're not trying to thread the needle in only having one shot. Right. And it takes so much pressure off, and then even the experience of experiencing people, it takes a ton of pressure off. So yeah, that's a good start, I think. If we're gonna maybe start seeing if you guys have questions about what we already talked about, we'll keep moving forward. But Nikki, I thought I saw something in the chats.
I said Bernie's got something going.
Yeah. So Bernie says, do you connect past lives with the soul's age? Example, if someone has had many past lives, are they an old soul?
So I'll jump first, and then you can I'll throw your opinion or feel free to disagree. It's anybody who, I'm going to say it like this: anybody who is on this particular call right now, and likely anybody that you know has lived thousands of human lifetimes, like big numbers of human lifetimes, very likely. It is, I think, to a certain extent. I don't know if that's what qualifies an old soul, or if it's a perspective that's acquired over that, or if it's just my tip of the pen and the cultural conditioning that I have creates a me that feels like an older soul. I can't really speak to that. I'd like to think that the one thing I do believe is the information, the energy and information that is me, the hard drive that is me, has been predisposed multiple times to speak about spirituality and to teach spirituality in some way. And I'd like to think that in other versions I've been an old soul. Also, I was one of those kids that was always told as an old soul, but I don't know if it necessarily that has the same thing to do with the number of lifetimes you live, because most people that you've been around have lived thousands of different versions of themselves.
I would agree with you as far as it's not so much based on the number of lifetimes. It's really more based on how much data are you bringing in from other lifetimes, how much elevated wisdom. So it's you could have 10 lifetimes or 1,000, but if you're bringing in the elevated wisdom, the collective wisdom, and there's many examples of this. You were actually one when people are literally telling you you're an old soul. You bring a wisdom in that isn't from little Tommy Jr., which, by the way, that's all I'm going to think about is little Tommy Jr. running around.
Well, technically, my mom didn't want a junior, so I'm Roman numeral 2, but call me Deuce.
Deuce, the Deuce. So anyway, no, but the little kid that was running around, the tip of the pen, you were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
You didn't have any wisdom, really, other than the soul coming in, other than the lifetimes coming in. So you just happen to be more connected to those experiences and wisdoms, and you pull them in through with you into this lifetime. And that could have just been one other lifetime, sure, or 1,000. So Bernie, I believe truly from this standpoint, it's just how much wisdom people pull in. And I've so many stories, and I've had some personal experiences with where kids come into this world, and at 4 they start talking, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, when I love these tanks. These are my favorite tanks. And when I was in the war, my buddies and we were in this regiment and we did these tanks. And the parents are thinking the kids are just making this up and crazy. And there's documentation of these and videos done and all this really cool stuff where it shows these kids, and then they look this stuff up. And here they are speaking specifically to a regiment, actually people's names, including their name and all of that. And it's just amazing to watch. And for me, those are hard things to deny, past life experiences and stuff, and how people bring those in. Now, for most people, that fades. The actual details.
Yeah.
But the essence of wisdom doesn't have to. And so, does that answer your question, Bernie? Yeah, cool.
Great book, by the way. Anybody who's just interested in the idea of past lives, if anybody hasn't read Many Lives, Many Masters, it's a really, really cool book that a gentleman who was a very, very just by the book clinical psychologist. I think he still does, or he did recently. Ran the psych division over at University of Miami, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And he had a gal that came to him, just had a real problem, and it was past life regression that wound. He realized that she was channeling certain past lives. Did a long series of past life regression with him, and she kept getting better and better and better, and eventually released. And it fundamentally shifted his perspective, because he was a very linear, logical individual. The only path for him to heal her was to go in this other direction. It's a really cool book.
Cool. I think I've heard of it maybe once or twice, but I've never read it. That sounds really fun. Many Lives, Many Masters, right?
Yep.
by what's the author? Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my
But
head.
that's such a specific title. It'll
Yeah,
pull
it'll
up
be,
pretty quick. Okay, let me speak to one thing really quick as we start to move forward. I will also want you guys to think about this because I know this will be a question out there. It's like, do we run into a lot of people in past lives all the time? And I would say the answer is yes, especially if you're living a lot. But I want you to think of it in two levels. First and foremost, if you're hike a mountain, the more you hike a mountain, the more you can see of the valley. If you're in Arizona or whatever mountain or wherever you're at, the higher your perspective, the more you can see or experience of what's around you. If you're in a valley, it's harder to see, and there's not as good a perspective of just an even line of sight. When we start raising our vibration, we start to experience more and see more of those people who have been a part of our lives. It's taken me over 40 years to connect with you and really meet you and interact with you. And as I've elevated in my consciousness and my experience, here you are, somebody who speaks the same language, and there's a familiarity. And by the way, we've probably had, what, maybe 4 conversations, 5?
Yeah, this is probably, I think this is the 4th or 5th, yeah.
But every time we met from the very first time, it's he knew of me, I knew of him, and it was just like, and we went deep fast, and we weren't even trying. It was just so familiar. You left that going, oh yeah, that's my buddy Tom, and I didn't even know you really, and I felt the same from you. So I have this draw to those kinds of people, and the higher I've gone in my vibration, I start to be really aware. So that's one thing that's really cool. So as I've evolved and grown, I'm starting to cross paths with different people. But more importantly is, if you think about this fabric of life, a lot of the same threads cross paths, different, a lot when a blanket, let's just say, is getting threaded together. In this area is going to be more familiar, and maybe it's a pattern or whatever. It's going to have kind of a more cohesive, and then other areas are going to be more distant and probably not going to cross unless the blanket's folded or something like that. So in general, when we're in this beautiful space-time continuum in this bigger universe, I feel like a lot of the same threads are constantly weaving in and out. And so different lifetimes of you and me, or me and Nikki, or anyone else I get to meet along the way, have that. So to answer a question that hasn't been asked, a lot of times we end up cycling through a lot of the similar people, just in different shapes, ways, and forms.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I agree 1,000%. Absolutely.
Cool. Looks like we have another comment or question.
Oh, Lexi loves that book.
Yes, and she dropped the author's name in the comments there, Brian Weiss.
Brian Weiss. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk something fun as far as past lives go, and how we can utilize the wisdom of past lives. So through meditative experiences, through clearing and calming the mind, believe it or not, while you're the tip of the pen in this lifetime, you can go back through to the pen, be able to connect to your source self, and then actually travel and experience other lifetimes and work through or with other lifetimes. And I've been able to, through work, call in other lifetimes to show me, teach me, educate me, or for me to work on showing, sharing, and holding space for them. And it's been dual. And in my mind, I've sat with many lifetimes and worked on elevating the total vibrational experience of all the different streams of water that I can see or experience at that one space and time. So this speaks to time. This speaks to how it's kind of not this thing, but it's not this thing. We actually can affect other lifetimes by being able to meditate and connect to our soul and then reach those lifetimes. And then conversely, we can let those lifetimes affect us. Like the kid who brings in the knowledge of World War II and the tanks and everything else, we can pull in the knowledge from other lifetimes to support us, whether it's being a better business person or connecting or learning how to be more empowered as whatever skill set that lifetime had, or whatever teaching that lifetime ended up having. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, 100%.
Have you done much of that? Tell me more.
Well, so it's kind of like what you just described. I'll do the thing that you do with me sometimes, which is I'm going to chunk it down and make it and make it accessible. So one thing that Al's talking about here is, let's say for example, I died in Vietnam in my prior life, just for the hell of it. All right. So I have the ability to go into, to through meditation, go into that area, that lifetime. And I have the ability to heal the soul essentially, in that particular lifetime, and raise that particular, this is my interpretation of what you're saying, raise my experience of that lifetime, or another lifetime, or another lifetime, or in the other direction, possibly in the in the future as well. But you have the ability to heal the parts of you that may have been negative at certain points in chronological time. But as Al's reminding us, it feels chronological because we live in a chronological world, but it's all, again, the soul has a memory that it's replaying in constant time. If you just want to look at it like this, it can't differentiate here now from another time, because it actually is all kind of happening at the exact same time. So is that what you're
100%? Yeah. And I remember distinctly, I have in this lifetime had a pretty bad lower back injury from college sports.
Yeah, it's lower back brothers.
Yeah.
You heal it too?
Yeah. And so I went actually through to a lifetime when I was a Native American Indian, and I was really stubborn because I was a chief and I wanted to hold space or hold position and hold my space, instead of taking the tribe and just migrating and not trying to stand my ground, and just allowing myself to know that there's plenty of abundance and that there's plenty of areas to go, and I don't have to hold my ground in this one space with all the openness. That stubbornness and that feeling like I needed to fight, and how I died because I was so stubborn was in that lower back. And so I went back to that lifetime. I sat with that chief and talked to him about these concepts and this elevated experience. And then actually,
so you actually went and talked to him as Al Fuentes, tip of the pen right now, actually went and had a conversation with Al Fuentes, the Indian chief, as two individuals.
Correct.
Oh, cool.
And then went and spoke to him about, and I was more of like a spirit guide at that point, but so I didn't. He was wondering, he didn't care about what I was wearing because I was more of a spirit guide. But yeah, as myself, knowing consciousness of Al, going to him and speaking to him and holding space. And as he then readjusted his life and his elevated experience, and didn't have to always fight, because that's been a big thing in all my lifetimes, is battle and fighting. He was able to migrate, and literally my back started healing so much faster, and things started releasing, and old stuff that just got out of the way. So that's a literal example of what you were saying and what I'm saying. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And wouldn't be surprised if you were in Vietnam and I was there with you.
That is 1000% the reason why I hypothetically use that one. There are others that have been interesting too.
Yeah. Cool. What other thoughts out there? What other questions do you guys have? We can talk for days, but we want to really design it to people who have thoughts or questions or even comments.
I guess I have a question that I think will be helpful for people, just from my experience, and how to determine if the trait or the fear or whatever issue you're having is, like, how to really break it down and figure out if it is something from a past life that you can let go of and redefine how you live it in this life. Because you can get so specific and get into everything, like maybe that's not actually me, but I'm living that way because it's in there. So maybe just to address that more.
So this is the interesting part about when you do this particular type of work is, how do you access, and how do I make this practical right now? So I'm going to give a couple thoughts on mine, and I'm sure Al has some thoughts to kind of layer in. It starts with, to a certain extent, it starts with a bit of intellect and the analytical process. I'm experiencing some kind of disruption. Maybe I'm exceptionally angry about something, and I don't understand why that is. I'm immediately going, first of all, I'm detaching from the experience of anger. If I don't detach from the experience of anger, what I'm going to do is my monkey version of my brain is going to find the reason why I'm pissed and blame it. So the first thing to do is like detaching from the experience of whatever the disruption is. And then it's really looking and going, is there something in my environment that's creating this right now? And you may find that there's not something in your environment directly that's creating it. And if you're sitting there, if you're able to meditate, and you're able to be in a state, and you're going, this just doesn't feel like it's me here now. I don't understand, but I have this energetic disruption, but I don't feel exactly where. Then it's kind of like, well, perhaps it's legacied information, so I view it as legacied information because, again, tip of the pen and the other versions of you. In actuality, it's all occurring simultaneously, but maybe it's legacied information. And then for someone who doesn't do the same degree of work with this, I'm going to just straight up toss it to you because I know what my process is, but what my process is, I'm going to use applied kinesiology and I'm going to determine exactly what's going on, exactly what the thing is, but that's not something that everybody has access to at this particular point. So what would you do in this?
So the first part would be the same. Absolutely. The first steps are to just use your logic, your intellect. If somebody slaps you in the face, literally in this lifetime, there's probably a good chance that you're experiencing some anger because of something that happened in this lifetime, because that slap hurt and whatever else. And so all the things that led up to that. Now, it could also be a part of other lifetimes triggering that experience, but the actual slap in the face, the physical, someone hitting you will cause some hurt, pain, anger, whatever, or all those things. Logically, you're like, okay, this is happening in the here and now. So now I need to address this. You could continue to unwind it, but if you just stayed, okay, so if it is the here and now, if it is me at the tip of the pen, then what can I do to change this experience? How can I let go? How can I learn from this to evolve and empower myself? If it's not that, if you're like, you know what, there's nothing here big enough. I got angry at a level of 8 and somebody just said a comment as I separate from it, which is the second piece. So first, use logic and intellect. Second, separate from the emotion, because if you don't, you'll always find a reason to, and you'll just be clouded. You'll always find a reason to blame the actual real life in front of you. But if you can separate from it, which isn't easy, but that's where meditative work or visualization work comes in. But when you separate, and then you can go, okay, my anger was an 8, but the experience was like a 2.
Yeah.
There's somehow
disproportionate response.
And which is what you said. Then you're going to muscle test, or applied kinesiology is what you call it, but it's really like muscle testing is more of it's a way to check into your higher self and your soul's truth without getting your consciousness involved to try to figure it out. Is that a great way to say it?
Yeah. So it's a, yes, without getting into the full applied kinesiology conversation, what it's a way to discern. So I can very quickly go, A, B, C, D, E, E. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now what is that thing? You know what I mean? And that's, but again, that's a training I have. So assuming somebody doesn't have that particular type of training.
Yeah, sure. There's lots of ways you can do this. One is start to get quiet. It takes patience. It takes understanding, and it takes allowing yourself to really be open to receive. Getting quiet, getting patient, getting open. If it isn't from this lifetime, if there's no real reality, then what in me is feeling angry? What texture, what side? And there's no formula to this, because the anger is so specific to something bigger that you're going to have to search. But the patience can always be a part of the formula. Just holding space, putting it out in front of you mentally, just putting it out. Okay, here was the anger. It was an 8. Here's how I responded. Here's where it's coming from. Let me put that anger in front of me. Take a deep breath in. And then now I'm just going to open it up to some bigger reason. And there could be a lace to it or a tie to it from this lifetime when it comes to how you relate to it. And that's where the wisdom would be. So for example, if I'm like, okay, this person did something that was a 2, but I'm an 8. The message would be, one of the messages could be, it's like, okay, well, this isn't from this lifetime. What am I supposed to do with this? So then you close your eyes and you go, it's okay to let someone be who they are. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to justify myself. So you kind of take something that isn't yours or you can't believe, but still relate it to the tip of the pen in this lifetime. And so then you interpret, why is it still showing up as a gift in this lifetime? And typically it's so you can know, see, love, and connect to yourself more. So it's a kind of a tricky thing. So it's not yours. It's something past life, but it's here anyway. Why did you pull it through? Why is it showing up? So and if you have the skill set, you can go to a different lifetime, but we're trying to keep it super simple for this example. So then you just know it's not yours, and then you don't have to own it. But then you can still go, what am I still meant to learn in this lifetime from it? So the nice thing is once you realize it's not from this lifetime, you can go, okay, cool, let it go.
I think that there's two things there. So one of the on just the correction part of it or the release part of it, I think that something that is exceptionally valuable and will work probably 95% of the time is when you do meditate and you determine, hey, this is not, whatever I'm experiencing is not me. You know, it doesn't make sense for it's me now. Like intentionally forgiving and releasing your the end, whatever was the trigger for the issue, and forgive and release that, and then intentionally forgiving and release self for whatever you happen to be experiencing, and really like almost like meditatively forgive and release until you feel empty will probably resolve whatever the particular block is. And with respect to past lives, and this is the thing that I think that even if it's fascinating to you, then go down the path. It's richly rewarding. It's really cool.
It's fun.
And if it's not that nerdly fascinating like it is for me, I won't call you a nerd out. But if it's not that nerdly fascinating like it is for me, at least you can understand that there is an infinite thing that's occurring. And I think that it's very empowering if I'm in my day and I'm going through my normal day and I feel this significant disruption. It almost makes me feel better to know that I'm not the crazy one. That maybe I am, but that I'm not the crazy one, that there's something else that is infinite, that is part of me, that I'm tapped into, and that since I can release that through forgiving and releasing, my world suddenly becomes much bigger, which creates a more empowering context for me to live. And at the same time, I learn, and I can learn a greater degree of control and acceptance of myself in situations.
100%. So essentially, and to give a real example, is I'll walk around sometimes, or all of a sudden I'll get like really stressed out or really upset or frustrated. I'm like, where is that coming from? And then I take a second, I'm like, oh, that's not mine. That's not from this lifetime. I'm like, all right, I can just like move that to the side. Well, what is in this lifetime? Me here now, all the realities, all the logic, intellect, everything I'm meant to experience right now. Not meant to, but am experience. And none of it is fear, doubt, worry, stress, or whatever. So I'm just going to go, oh, okay, I'll let that go to the side. I don't put a ton of weight to it. It doesn't. And when you get good at this, you can quickly do that. And you can just, but for some people, you might have to sit down at first, use this process that we're talking about. But again, just to keep it simple, if you don't want to really try to figure it all out, you just go, not mine in this lifetime. I'm going to set it aside, but what can I learn from it to grow myself in this lifetime? And that would be the simple form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you know how to muscle test or use applied kinesiology or a pendulum or whatever else, or
just your intuition is developed to a place where you could, I mean, my hallucination is that's where you are at this point, is your intuition takes you very quickly to what's going on. You can feel if there's validity in where you're going.
Yeah. And then sometimes there is, for example, there was stress. I woke up one day, it's 5:30 in the morning, and I am just stressed out. And it was from this lifetime, but it was just as COVID was happening, and I was minding my own business and sleep, and I must have just happened to tie into.
There was a lot of COVID stuff.
Yeah, right in the very beginning, I was just like, holy crap, this all came at me at once. I must have not been paying attention because I was sleeping, and I tied into it, and I woke up with straight up anxiety. I'm like, all right, like I know what this is. I better go handle it. And I had to meditate for like an hour just to truly bring myself back to my reality and really unplug from the framework of this timeline and the stress that was about to go down, or the experiences that were about to go down. So cool. Any other thoughts or questions out there? I want to get into some fun things, but I really do want, these are some big constructs, big topics.
I want to be mindful of the time and also make sure we touch on karma, because that was something that you guys talked about. And if anybody's tuned in for karma, so
this is why she's moderating.
Yeah, it's important. You gotta regulate.
Yeah. So karma. What do you got to say about karma?
So there's a lot of misperceptions about karma that have kind of been adopted more from, Western culture, St. Peter, letting you in at the gate kind of stuff. That's, if I say, karma's there's at least a 50% chance you're gonna say bitch in your head. Karma's a bitch. If I say karma's gonna, at least 50% chance you're gonna say get you. You know what I mean? It's a boomerang. What goes around comes around. Those are very colloquial and popular expressions that have been adopted with karma. That I personally, my personal truth and understanding of it is not what it actually is. Karma is a phenomenon, the same way like rain is a phenomenon. It is a thing that exists, and it's a thing that exists because certain conditions are present to create it. And like any phenomenon, there are effects of karma, but it is just a thing that exists without judgment of judgment of its own. So
so I hear you saying karma isn't an energy or entity that is course correcting you because it's its own consciousness keeping Tom in check.
Correct.
It's more of an experience of circumstances because it's raining outside. Then right now these are the experiences of that moment.
Yeah, or like when water evaporates. So water evaporation occurs, condensation and cooling. Eventually, enough of it, then it starts raining. Karma. So karma, I guess maybe should just like what creates karma. But correct, there is no consciousness to karma. Karma is consciousness. Consciousness being we're all one, the same thing, literally the same thing. Karma is an expression of energy, the same way you're an expression of energy, the same way I'm an expression of energy. It's all God all the time. But karma in and of itself is a neutral event. So karma is created through, this is my hallucination, yours could be different. The karma is created through thought. It is you need a object, some kind of, or a situation or a framework or something, and you need to have an opinion about it. Karma is degrading information or negative information that is that exists because of what has generated thoughts over time. And if you think about your day, how many thoughts do you have over the course of a day?
I couldn't even count them.
The bajillion, right? And how many, and over the course of a lifetime, how many? How many times do you experience an agitation, or you experience some other, with people, with things, with the traffic, with everything? We are essentially karma creating machines. Now, kind of like what happens is karma over time. Let's say we bump into each other. We talked about like we tend to see the same people over and over again in multiple lives. Well, karma, when it exists, karma has kind of like a gravity. So if you and I experience an event and and karma is created, I'm like, ow, that son of a bitch, he is such an asshole. And you're like, that Tom guy, I'm gonna punch him right in his fucking head. When you when that energy exists and karma is created, it's kind of it's information that kind of stays within our field, if you will. Our energetic field. That over and over again, when you rinse and repeat it, it kind of creates almost like a gravity to it. And so through lifetimes, through different, through time, you tend to orbit around the people that you have that information collected with. It's one of the and some of that information, again, so for me, karma is negative. It is, and I don't mean it's bad. There's a difference between degrading, negative, and bad. I'm not assigning a badness to it. It's more like it just is. It's information that impedes your experience of whatever is actually occurring and whatever the individual, an individual actually is. So, when you're walking down the street, that guy, I don't know, something about that guy, I just want to punch him right in his face. That's probably an indication that there's karma present,
Yeah. So all of that makes sense. I'd like to add to it, because the essence of what I heard you say was that all of our thoughts are constantly creating energy, creating this thing. And karma would almost be the human description of the energetic field that we are in existence in. And your interpretation is it is a negative, it's the negative energetic description?
It's more like, when I say negative, it's more like it degrades my experience of consciousness of individuals.
I would say it's more of a real-time reflection of, in real time could be just in this moment right now, or real time could have been for the last 2 years or 5 years, because again, with time not being such a thing for the universe, it could be the last 20 years, but real time is this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And real time experience of the thoughts and the actions and the behaviors that then create the energetic field. Now, that could be positive, I believe, or it could be negative. Karma is almost the reflection of your energetic existence. So if I'm constantly trying to take, or if I steal, they'll say, oh man, that's bad karma to take. Well, why is it bad karma? Because karma's here to judge you, and if you do something, you're gonna be punished? No, well, how I see that is, if I steal something or take something, then I'm creating a thought and an action and an energetic experience of that take is a part of my energy, period. Mm-hmm. Take. So take isn't just me taking. Taking is something being taken from me too, because take is the energy. So if I'm creating energy of take, I'm going to attract myself to you, who also takes. And I may steal $30 from my mom, and then a day, 2, a week, a year later, you may rob my wallet, because of the energy of take that I've created, the reflection of my own thoughts, my own experience, i.e. karma in this case, is doing that. But if I am somebody who's experiencing lots of love and lots of compliments, and part of my consciousness is always looking for beautiful, loving thoughts to experience myself and experience life, and I'm looking for oh, I love that. Like, as soon as you walked in, dude, I love those socks. Like, that's part of my energetic field. I'm always looking and seeing magic and love and beautiful things. And by the way, he's got really cool socks on. And so, and as I think this way, not because I'm forcing myself to, because I just really like to see the really fun, beautiful things in life, I'm creating a karma or an energetic field that creates that same experience back. And so what do I get? A lot of people saying compliments to me about various things, and unsolicited too. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that would be the reflection of karma in creating an energetic field or a thought pattern that attracts positive, high vibrational responses. Does that make sense?
No, I understand your context on it. And I agree with respect to, so when I'm looking for the beauty and I'm like, those are amazing kneecaps. Then they are well shorn. I'm creating that thing and that thing, that positive thing, that beauty will be attracted back to me 100%. For me, that's not karma.
Yeah. What would that be then, if that's not karma?
I mean, is it just more like a purity of consciousness that you're tapped into? I mean, that you're tapped into what is just love, pure and beautiful, and that's what kind of like what you're sending out.
So here's what I would say, just for people experiencing this, whether it be on video or live. This is where Tom is really brilliant, because what he just said, without realizing, said, like, well, karma is this thing that is this negative construct. The other thing is just how we should be, how we should exist, just how we are, how we're truly meant to be if we're just being. Why should that have a name? Why should that have a description? That's what you just said.
Yeah. So karma. Dr. David Hawkins had described karma in this way. And it's kind of like if you know, this is an imperfect analogy because it presupposes like one direction in reality, like we're all God. But just like imagine you're outside and a lot of cloud cover, right? But it is a beautiful day and it's fantastic and you're just loving life, and all of a sudden, the clouds like disappear and are gone and you are just experiencing just like the magnificence of the sun on your face and like everything. And that energy, like karma essentially was the cloud cover. In the absence of the clouds, you're experiencing more of the purity of consciousness and you're like in that state. So that's essentially what we're saying about karma.
And I respect that. And this is where I love these conversations and why I never try to like make sure that they're like perfect and that I meet with people that like, oh, we have to have the same thoughts and ideas, although we happen to just because of our connection and our relationship together. But this is one that's subtly different. And the reason why I say it's a little different is because I do believe humans have to still quantify time. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I know time as this thing, but I still have so many hours in a day, and I'm still showing up. This was at 1 o'clock. We both showed up at 1 o'clock. So we address time on some level.
Sure.
And I do believe karma is much like that, where in a perfect universe of where our human consciousness is fully evolved, then time just doesn't matter. In a perfect universe, I believe that karma is only this thing that can maybe be measured by the human construct, and the other thing doesn't need to be described. It just is the light, the sun, the beautiful sky. But I know for most people, because they have to put context to it, I really like personally the idea of it addressing both all the positive way you feel your thoughts and the more, because I know personally for me, that's exactly been the case. I would say I had a lot of reflection of pain and suffering in my life because I had a lot of thoughts of pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. And now I have a lot of experience of joy and abundance in my life because that's where I put my thoughts. And so naturally, even for me, I will say, oh man, like it's funny because I don't think, anytime I think of karma, I do say just bad karma. I never address it as good karma. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, I still feel like their comfortability, just like with time, it's comfortable for them to think good thoughts, good energetic field, good karma. Bad thoughts, bad energetic field, bad karma. And much like 1 minute, 10 hours, 10 days.
Yeah, no, I totally get it from, like the contextualization of it. I think it can be extraordinarily valuable, from as an anchor to be able to relate to material. I think 100%. It makes a lot of sense in how you contextualize and deploy it, for sure.
But it is interesting. I always, if I relate to karma, it's like, oh, I'm not going to have any bad karma. Or like, oh, that's bad karma. Oh, that's bad juju. Oh, that's like, yeah. Like, I'm not putting that out there.
And again, this is kind of like where just these conversations become super interesting because it's, like, well, why do I have my, my experience? Well, because I've had subjective experiences of my testing and their testing like over periods of time or whatever. Okay, well, whatever. That's you have your subjective experiences. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's whatever is empowering for the individual, because it's all about what are we doing right now to experience more peace, beauty, joy, flow in our current life.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, it is 2:02. We're going to extend it. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? I do see that we addressed MJ's kind of thought. We'll let you guys ask some things. I saw you have some thoughts there. Did you have anything you wanted to address?
I had done some meditation on on karma like earlier and had written down stuff, but I think we kind of hit it all. I unfortunately kind of like word vomited it out like earlier, and so
But let's talk about one other thing, because I know people ask me a lot of times, well, do I have to pay in this lifetime for things I did in a past life? And that's both past life and karma energy. That's a combination.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say it like this. It doesn't test that you have to pay anything or that you're definitely going to pay. What you're essentially doing is creating a set of conditions which makes it likely the thing that you've been putting out is going to wind up, being experienced by you. Let's go back to your stealing. If I'm stealing and I am harming, over and over again, I'm creating enough karma that it is likely that in my orbit is going to show up something that carries that vibrational energy that is going to hit me. Now, but do I have to pay for it in this life? Do I have to pay for it in it? There's nobody out there that's saying like, all right, you owe 20 things for the karma that you did. Is the information there, and is there value in releasing the information? You bet. There is, again, karma can limit the experience of our connection to God, source, universe, oneness. And so when you release karma, you not only are you releasing that attractor field of the same type of information, but you're also connecting deeper with that source, that source information. So
so to put that even more in context, it's just, if you come into this lifetime because you killed somebody in the last lifetime and you're coming in with guilt and shame and you feel like energetically you're wrong, then that energy is going to feed thoughts. Those thoughts are going to create an energetic field, and then you're going to feel guilty, wrong, shame, and then as a result, most likely
attitudes,
your human
behavior,
actions are going to then create suffering for you in this lifetime. 100%. And the logic would be, I'm paying for something in my past. But all you have to do is release an old experience and let go, even if it's just from this lifetime. You know how much I've screwed up in this lifetime, and how much pain and suffering not only I've created for myself, but how much of that is then as a result then been experienced by others because of my own big pain and hurt and stuff. But I don't feel like I have to pay for anything because I didn't know what I didn't know. And especially if it's from another lifetime, we're just trying to continue to step in and be as big as we can. But even if it is from this lifetime, and it's one of my past current lifetimes of the old version of myself, I was just doing the best I could
100%
with what I knew at the time. And
it goes back to kind of what we talked about in the past life thing, is forgive and release. Forgive and release of self, forgive and release of whomever else. There's nothing when it comes to paying back or releasing karma. There's no like, all right, if I stole your car in the last life and I have to make some kind of recompense, it's like, no, it's not.
You got to give somebody a car in this lifetime. That's a human contract.
Yeah, it's human contract. It's the forgiving, the releasing of myself for the ignorance that I carried at a particular point in time. Forgive and release of you for whatever it was there. Forgive and release of self here. And I mean that's the game as far as releasing most types of karma.
We have one more question, Nick. What was that?
Yes, Linda is asking, can a person live as two different people in a past lifetime?
In the same lifetime? That would be the question I would have. The way it's worded, because you can be
saying yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the answer, in my experience, is it's a very tricky thing to have a simultaneous life. Let's just say you and I come from the same soul and we're split. And now it does happen. It is rare though, but where the same soul in the exact same lifetime is experienced. And that's, again, just my construct, because then you're talking twin flame, which is a lot about what people talk about when they talk about that. But it is possible to take a soul that splits and is familiar with itself in this lifetime as you and me. What is your thoughts on that?
I've never really done an inquiry in or looked at the idea of one soul or soul fragmented, same soul identified as the same. It tests strong. It tests that it's a phenomenon that exists. But I don't know if. What I'd be more interested to find out is does Linda have a particular story or concern or something, because it's a very fascinating question to ask. So
it's very fascinating.
I'm almost more interested to know like what's the why behind the ask.
Sure. Yeah, but it is possible.
Yeah.
It's just not as common.
Yeah.
Another question, Hannah?
Yes. Hannah says this kind of goes hand in hand with what you were speaking about before. Do you think the same struggles or same kind of struggles and challenges keep showing up in multiple lifetimes because you haven't learned what you are supposed to yet?
So that's a really good question and a really good point. Alan, would be interested to see what your take on this is. So the idea of the same struggles or the same patterns repeating is exactly what we were talking about earlier. When you have when you've created this negative energy and it's a part of your energy field, and it creates a gravity an attractor field that kind of like tends to draw the same thing in over and over again. That's more of a natural consequence of having that energy and information present, and less of a must learn a lesson or complete the karma or whatever. Now, it doesn't test. When I say test kinesiologically, muscle test, and we're more than happy. We could do a testing thing at some point. Get the people together. You could experience this. It doesn't test that we are here to do anything other than to experience. No lessons to learn, nothing to do. We are here to experience that is whole, complete, and perfect, exactly as it is. That does not mean that learning isn't extraordinarily valuable and creates a more thriving, enriched experience, and contextualizing what I'm going through as where my opportunities to learn 100% is like the entire game, as far as as far as I'm concerned. And through that process, might you resolve karma, which then makes you less likely to do it the next lifetime, 1,000%.
Yeah. So, and just for the sake of time, because we're wrapping up, but did you want to wrap that up?
Oh yeah, but from the perspective of we're here to learn lessons, any should or here supposed to that you tend to attach to something like this is going to be degrading, physically degrading your body. You won't your body will malfunction, but certainly it is a thriving context to adopt.
And I would say yes to everything he said, and I would put it into terms of just a personal relationship. For me, I've been a warrior, a literal warrior in many, many lifetimes. As a result of that constant thought field and energetic field I've created, naturally in this lifetime, I'm a wrestler, literally combative, a battler. I'm ready to do this. I've made enemies out of a lot of people in my life because of that same construct, because I got to win, and there has to be an enemy in order for me to win something, because that's what warriors, that's how it's the process. But Hannah, is it something I haven't figured out and I just got to get my act together because it is my soul's purpose to learn never to be a warrior? No. But because I've happened to have been a warrior in many lifetimes, and because it's creating some struggle for me literally in this lifetime, is it something I want to clean up? 100%, because I'm done battling. So that was a big thing for me, is I stopped battling, I stopped fighting, I stopped that whole experience, but not because it was some big soul lesson to learn, just because it happened to be a series of multiple times. And why not learn it? It's such a valuable thing to learn. And then of course you take that back up to the soul's consciousness. It gives context to the universe, it gives context to this realm, and it gives more understanding. So I believe, seeing you nod your head, that all makes sense. It's kind of tricky because yes, you can learn here, but it's not like your mission, and if you don't learn it, you will fail at the soul level. It just doesn't work that way.
No, you're whole, complete, and perfect, exactly as you are. If you're in the gutter, and you're doing nothing, a needle sticking out of you, or if you are living the most thriving existence possible, you are whole, complete, and perfect, exactly as you are. There's nothing to do. And for you, if you're drawn, if what's in you is just drawn to self-optimize and resolve these things, then that is amazing. That is a thriving place to operate from.
We'll try to answer one more question real quick, and then we'll end it. Does Linda want to elaborate?
And also, Hannah said both responses are super helpful. Thank you.
Cool.
So.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Since Linda didn't, it could have just been a curiosity question, which I think is really amazing, awesome, if she didn't have a specific reason for asking that. but it is something that I'm really happy to have you here today, because just
cool,
to
man.
talk
Thank
about
you.
this stuff and get it out there, and to really be able to hear other people. I live in my own little world, in my own little bubble, and with the universe, and I share with clients and stuff like that. But I really enjoy doing this, and especially with people who have different viewpoints and different ways to communicate it. And it's just really fun because we're truly in alignment on all of it. So it's just fun. But I also have been with people where we haven't been in alignment, and everyone learns also equally. So thank you, Tom Ross.
Cool, man. Hey, really appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah,
very
for
much.
sure. Tom is a huge spirit, a huge soul. He's also a great loan officer. So from a human construct, tip of the pen, you work for Bay Equity.
Tip of the pen, I'm doing loans for Bay Equity, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's the Deuce. You'll find him online as the Deuce, the Deuce sellingloans.com. No, I don't think that's your website.
Yeah, that's not the handle, no.
The Deuce. Anyway, so Al Fuentes, follow you. Is there a place to follow you?
Not yet, but we're working on that.
Okay, and for me, it's the Al Fuentes. That's my Instagram. I do put stuff online. I post a lot of different unique things on there, so it's pretty fun. I do have a website. It has a bunch of free content on it if you're interested in that as well. It's just alfuentes.com, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. So get your stuff going.
Well, get my stuff going. Listen, so on the topic of karma past lives, there's been a lot of different versions of me where the spiritual teaching thing didn't end happily.
Yeah, you burned at the stake kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff.
I totally get
so
it.
It's taken a considerable amount of work over a number of years to actually step into and actually be willing to talk, about stuff. So
this has been part of that process.
This has been part of the process. This is which, again, thank you very much. It means the world to me. You and I couldn't have sat here and had this conversation, a year ago without me becoming so disrupted. I would just be going, and just literally unable to speak. So thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited for you to really put yourself out there and share your brilliant mind with the world. So.
Cool, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.